Hi, I'm Roger Pine from Holistiplan. This is our Winning with Holistiplan series, and I'm here with Penny Phillips. She is the president and co-founder of Journey Strategic Wealth. Penny, it's such a pleasure to get to talk with you today. Welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. And we were chatting a little bit before the call. This one will be an interesting one because a few of the other calls that we've done have been advisors who were like really deep in Holistiplan and they've uploaded 1,000 tax returns in Holistiplan. And that's a whole other type of conversation. You're more on the helping advisors be the best possible advisors they can be side of things. And so that's what I'm interested in doing too. I mean, that's why we started our company. We're just attacking this problem from different areas. So I think there's plenty we'll be able to talk about there. But first, maybe you could just fill me in on the history of Journey, on you, and then how you came to co-found Journey Strategic Wealth. And then I also understand that y'all have a whole other practice on the other side of helping advisors be the best advisors they can be.
Sure. And we, Journey Strategic Wealth recently became Holistiplan users and we love the tool. And so I can talk also about how we've integrated that into our core tech stack. But I'll take you to the beginning. So people who know my story already, it'll be a little bit repetitive, but I've spent my career as a advisor, coach, and consultant. And so prior to founding Journey, I ran a coaching and consulting company. And what I started to notice, Roger, the last, I'd say 5 years versus the last 10 in coaching independent advisors is that the conversation started to shift from help me build an efficient practice or enterprise within the BD or captive firm that I'm in and help me maximize all the tools and resources that are at my disposal here to, hey, wait a second, maybe this is an opportunity for me to go independent and try to build something where I can maximize enterprise value and sort of build what I've always wanted to build. And so it's a unique challenge to coach folks, not just on building a business, but on going independent and doing it completely from scratch with 1,000 different options available to them. And so, I started to notice that, wow, like we're only at the tip of the independent and now sort of move to RIA wave in our industry. And so I was running this coaching and consulting business, helping advisors build and merge and really make big strategic decisions about their business. And the pandemic hits, and I took a leap of faith. This is an idea I'd had for quite some time. I approached a couple folks who really good friends and advisors of mine in the business and said, well, we've always talked about building a firm that I felt filled a gap that existed in the industry. And so we built it. Journey Strategic Wealth is an RIA. Obviously, we offer full operational and practice management support to advisors. And the reason we're different, Roger, is because if you think about the options that exist in the independent space for advisors and the rhetoric that we've pushed as an industry, we've told advisors the way you are successful is if you step into the CEO role. Right? Like every single firm and every consultant tries to train advisors on how to be CEOs. And so advisors have it in their mind that, okay, I need to eventually replace myself as rainmaker and advisor, step into this CEO position, own my own business, do that really successfully, and figure out how to monetize and find successors and all the things. And so when advisors do that, the options for them are tack on to a firm, access some resources, and own your own business and build it how you want. Or sell your business and become an employee of a company. And I have a lot of thoughts on that model and how we're almost coming full circle back to sort of Wirehouse model. But and so there wasn't really an option that allowed advisors to explore the balance between independence, flexibility, and support. And so we've tried to combine all of the benefits of every model that exists. So offering advisor support, helping them build their business, allowing them to maintain 100% equity ownership in their business for as long as they want, no restrictive covenants in their contracts. and really working with them in a practice management consulting engagement, if you will, when they're with us to help them grow and evolve and hire and make smart decisions about their business. And so, our whole mission is that advisors, there's never been a more important time than now to be an advisor. And so we want to help advisors double down on doing what they do best, which is advising
Hmm.
and not wearing all the C-suite executive hats that exist in the independent business space.
Yeah. As you were talking, it reminded me of I used to be an advisor myself before starting Holistiplan. And I had all these doctor clients, right? And they're thrown into a similar situation, right? They go to all this training to be medical professionals, years of it. And then they're like, okay, go be the CEO of this company with 50 employees and it's
Exactly.
like, wait a minute, I didn't get any training and that wasn't what I was here to do. And that wasn't their passion
Right.
when they went into medicine. It's a similar thing. And you're totally right. Like advisors, we're in the same camp. I mean, some really enjoy the process of growing the business. And of course they have other sets of tools available to them. But yeah, you're filling a need for those whose gifts are elsewhere, I would say, or whose proclivities are elsewhere, at least at that stage of their career. I would imagine they could graduate to a point where it's like, you know what, I'm ready to take on this mantle now.
Correct. But even I'll give you a very specific example because we try to balance that. Like, we don't want to take all the control away from the advisor because if you've built a successful practice up until this point, you've done it because clearly you can build something.
Hmm.
And so we want to honor that. But here's a very simple example. The decision, if you've built an independent practice or you've tacked onto a firm and you're leveraging some of their compliance and investment management resources, like, I don't believe it should be the advisor's responsibility to make the decision on looking at all the fintech providers out there, deciding which one should be added to the lineup, which one shouldn't, figuring out how to actually contract, integrate. Like, that should be our job to come to advisors and say, look, in the last survey we did with all your clients, they expressed a desire to have this value add resource added. Holistiplan is as an example. I mean, this is exactly what we did. Like, you haven't heard of Holistiplan. We love it. We vetted it. We want you to test it out with your clients and we'll get you signed up and integrated. Like, that should be our job. So
Mm,
it's that balance of honoring the advisor as leader and person who knows client best, but also making it really easy for them to integrate resources into their practice.
yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure, yeah, like you said, post COVID was a perfect time because everything had to be, we had to look at everything, especially in tech stacks, about how we approach our businesses during COVID. So the timing was perfect in that sense. All right. Well, I was going to ask something else, but we might as well go into the segue to technology is there. So how do you, so you're in this position where you are helping advisors evaluate technology investments. I know it's maybe an overly broad question, but how do you do that? And maybe to put a little more color behind it, there's always new stuff.
Yeah.
There's the stuff that you have to have, like the CRM and your portfolio management system. But then there's new stuff, and we were new just a few years ago, so we're an
Yeah.
example. And there's always this: do you want to be an early adopter, and does that allow you to differentiate with your clients, or is being an early adopter take away from your ability to focus? How do y'all advise the clients on building the tech stack, and then especially when it comes to things like new technology or new approaches to addressing problems with technology?
It's a great question. It's a deep question. So I'll answer it a bunch of different ways, as I always do. So, one of the, I think, great things about our model is the advisor can always come to us with, like, hey, found this tool or saw this and I'm interested in it. What do you think? But the
Hmm.
reality is myself and the rest of the leadership team, like, we're out in the field. I mean, I'm at every single conference. I'm engaged with many of the fintech providers. I worked at Investnet, so my background is in fintech. So I tend to be the one to sort of have an ear to the industry and say, like, here's what's coming out, here's what's out, what do you think? And getting feedback from our advisors. We're the ones who actually go out and license and contract, so advisors don't have to worry about,
Mm.
building tech or adding tech within their practices. It's our job to be in tune with how each of our partner teams are uniquely serving clients so that we can come to them with, like, hey, Holistiplan would be perfect for you, Biz Equity might be perfect for you, etc. The thing I'd say about your sort of bigger question about how do you make the decision, we're really clear. So obviously we're clear on our value to advisors, right? Helping them, not just providing them resources to build, but actually implementing the initiatives for them. We're also really clear on our value to clients, and this is a really important point for advisors that I've been talking about for a long time. The industry has used the terms investment management and wealth management interchangeably for a really long time. And
Mhm.
what's happened is the consumer doesn't know the difference. They don't know the difference between a financial planner, a wealth management advisor, a financial advisor, an insurance agent, a broker to some extent. And so it's our responsibility not just to teach clients, like, hey, there's a lot of advisors out there. Here's what we do, and here's what you might get elsewhere. Here's what you're probably getting elsewhere, and here's what we offer. Now, to validate that value proposition, you actually have to prove that during your engagements.
Mhm.
So for us, when we think about tech, we think about what is going to help us prove value propositions. If our value proposition is, well, and we have a graphic, wealth management is investment management, it's risk planning, it's emotion management, it's tax planning, it's life decision management. We need to have tools that show that we do all of that.
Mhm.
And so when I think about what tools to bring to our advisors, like, it is all of the stuff that fits into each of those buckets. The challenge sometimes within the fintech space is there are tools that do, I mean, you folks are an outlier. There are tools that do sort of relatively the same thing, or maybe things slightly different. And then it's really a judgment call on where would the client have the best client or customer experience, and that's ultimately how we make our decision. But for anyone listening, it's, if you need to prove wealth management services, because the decision now is lowest cost or highest value, if you have to prove highest value, you need to use the tools that are going to help you show that.
Mhm. Well, it's a good way. It's a good way of framing it. It's a good lens to look through, which is, what is the thing I want the client to experience, and can I draw a line back from that to a product? And I would imagine, and I'm probably guilty of this too, from my days as an advisor, I would go into the exhibit hall at a conference and look at the products and think, oh, that's cool or that's shiny. And I didn't always necessarily have that line that went straight to the client. Whereas if you start with the client, work backwards, which is probably a rubric we should use for a lot of our decisions as advisors, or maybe all of them, um, that would help go a long way to to evaluate some of these tools. Yeah.
Totally. And it's, so I like how and if this is on video, actually, like, I like how you're showing
It's on
some,
video.
oh, good.
Yes.
Cause sometimes
Hand
they only use
motions are
audio, and
encouraged.
yes, I always tell advisors to think about it on when you're making a key decision about the business. And usually it's about a tech investment. Sometimes it's about, should we remove a piece of tech? Should we add a certain, piece to what we're doing? It's two things. Think about the client engagement on a spectrum that starts from really lead generation, lead nurturing, onboarding, review meetings, so like the professional service, ongoing service, and then ultimately multi-gen planning, meaning you're now moving on to Gen 2 of the family. So there's this client engagement spectrum, if you will. And so think about making decisions at each stage of that
Mhm.
spectrum. And you always have to ask yourself, does this decision reinforce value proposition in a real, tangible way? And secondly, does it align with long-term vision? So if long-term vision is to build a boutique wealth management enterprise that delivers value to all the business owners in my geographic location, in order to do that at a big scaled way, you need tools like Holistiplan, you need the financial planning tools, you need a portal, you need all the things. And so I like your term rubric, because I think advisors need to think more that way as they're making decisions.
Well, and you came up with another good segue to another question I had, which is, and I'll be honest, this is a challenge we've had marketing our own product, which is when we started out year 1 or 2, we were talking largely to advisors who were already doing a ton of tax planning. And so the value proposition for us was, look how much more efficiently you can do it. But that fits in a certain part of the tech stack. But there are investments that you make that are related to prospecting and bringing clients in the door. And I would argue that tax planning should be part of prospecting, bringing clients in the door. From my own experience, admittedly, it was buried bottom of funnel, but if a client came into my old firm and they had talked to 3 people in town and I was the one guy who looked at their tax return, they were like, whoa, no one else came up with this stuff,
Yep.
But still, that's very bottom of funnel. I think we've struggled to make the argument that a tool like Holistiplan or other technology tools, let's make it agnostic, that financial planning tools can be more top of funnel, middle of funnel. And so I know this is something that you have to be talking with advisors about. It's maybe a 2-parter, but how do advisors have this conversation about, you said wealth management versus investment management, like financial planning? We know it's valuable. We know it's a force for good. We know for many clients, it actually does more than getting that extra billionth of a % of alpha, but clients don't get it. And then how do we build out our capabilities so that we're investing in the right areas and moving financial planning farther up the funnel? That question was a lot of places, but I'm guessing you've answered it enough times that you know how to answer it.
No, it's the big question. It is the every, so I'll take a step back and say this. When you think about, 10 years ago, the language in everybody was talking about like robos are going to replace advisors, right?
Right.
That didn't happen. What it did is it further exacerbated this choice that consumers have to make now between lowest cost or highest value. So we know that, right? They can either go direct to a Vanguard or whatever it is, or they pay a premium. And this is not different from any other industry, right? The travel agency industry, like cheaptickets.com or concierge travel agent.
Right.
Same thing. Like, the problem is it's our responsibility now to prove what highest value actually means. So one really simple thing that just for some reason is so difficult for our industry to embrace is the idea of changing our language. I talk about this a lot. It starts with changing the way we talk about what we do. We market ourselves. When I say we, I mean advisors in this business. We talk to the consumer through our websites, on social media, through our marketing material at conferences, the way we talk to each other as professionals in this business. Comprehensive financial planning, by the way, means nothing to nobody.
Right.
Certified financial plan. Like, listen, it's great. And we should all have CFPs and all of that. But the client doesn't understand or know the history of our industry and where we've come from and evolved as a profession. We say things like holistic, like that doesn't mean anything in real terms, because the consumer of today, meaning the client, is overwhelmed with decisions that they have to make on a daily basis. And so I could go on a tangent on this topic, but what I say to advisors is, if you want to start explaining the value of financial planning, start talking about what you do in terms of the questions you help clients answer.
Yep.
Or in terms of the daily problems, not I want to retire at age 60, right? The daily problems that theoretically you can help somebody work through.
Right.
Easiest way to do that, take a fictitious top client of yours in your book of business. I call it the day in the life exercise, and literally list out all of the possible questions a client might have, like at an extreme level, right? Let's say they're really stressed about everything in their life. What are all the questions potentially that they would ask their partner, their current advisor, their accountant, their neighbor, their coworker, their boss, their HR department? List out all the questions. Just showing on your website or in a marketing piece or in the content you post on social media, like these are the things we help people reconcile, solve for, understand. That's financial planning. You don't have to define financial planning as the CFP board does. You simply have to show people what it means for them daily. So for me, it's starting there, and that language needs to carry through in everything you do. Like, never say comprehensive financial planning again, and you're a step closer to where you should be.
You know what I'm realizing as you were describing that, and again, I was guilty of this in the past, and I think this was kind of the accepted wisdom, 5 or 6 years ago, was your website was all about, we're going to help you live a complete life. Like a lot of advisor websites say that stuff now.
Yeah.
Like, and that's
Yeah.
kind of table stakes now. Like,
Completely.
and it doesn't really differentiate. And I know we're trying to make an emotional connection. That's what the marketing people tell us to do. But if we can do that, but maybe we can also demonstrate, like, here's an actual, this is what a tax second, people have questions like, did I pay too, I'm going to bring it back to tax. Did I pay too much tax? If you could say,
Bingo.
like, I'll give you a second look, I'll give you a second opinion on your tax return. Come
Yep.
on in for 30 minutes and I'll take a look. And if it goes well, then think of all the other amazing things I could do. That's more tangible than, I'm going to help you live, the most complete life you can have, that sort of thing.
Totally. And this is an example that will probably resonate with people. Like, how many times have you run into somebody that you know, and let's just say they own a business? I love this example because it happens to me all the time. People know I'm in financial services, and so, I mean, I don't think people in my life really know what I do. A lot of people know I'm first generation American, only one to ever go into a financial services. So I think people are still unsure, but I know a lot of blue collar families, a lot of people who own businesses, and they'll come to me or anyone and they'll say, like, God, I really need somebody to help me think through. We have the business, like, we want to sell it, or, gosh, like, we took the PPP loan. What does this really mean? Gosh, we want to find ways to, save, whatever it is. And most of the time they have an advisor. And it happened to me recently. I said to the person, you guys have an advisor. What does your advisor do for you? And they're like, no, that's just my investment guy. Like, I have some money in the markets and that's my investment guy. And if you go to the investment guy's website, it says all the things.
Oh yeah.
We'll help you live a better life and freedom and retirement. And so again, like, to your point, instead of having that on your site, or when somebody's asking you what you do, talking to them about, first thing we'll do is, to your point, and I will say most advisors quote, don't look at tax returns to begin with. So even just saying, like, one of the first things we'll do is look at your tax return. We can learn a lot from a tax return. Here are some of the things we might do or might be able to help you with when we analyze the tax. Like, there's nothing wrong with being that specific about what you do at an early part of an engagement with a client. For some reason, advisors just still want to talk in these very touchy-feely terms that don't mean a whole lot.
Yeah. I remember actually presenting financial plans to clients, and they're like, I didn't even know y'all did that.
Yeah.
And that would make me feel good in the moment, but I was like, that is a total failure. Both in the prospecting meeting and our marketing materials. Like, it should not be a surprise that I did all this work for this client after they've already hired me.
Or even saying to a client, like, we want to understand, especially if they have an advisor already. And back in the day, I would hear consultants tell advisors, like, tell clients you want to give them, the second opinion, or you can run a stress test on their, portfolios. And there was something to that language, but really, like, telling somebody, it's important for us to not just understand, like, your portfolio, but understand the tax implications of how that portfolio is managed, and asking them that, like, has your advisor assessed the tax implications of how the portfolio is managed and sort of reconciled that on your return? Like, the answer is going to be no,
Yeah,
90% of the time.
you're right. Yeah.
Those disturbing questions are important because people aren't getting that, and they're going to say, I don't know, or ask somebody what they're paying their advisor, that most don't know. So it's the same thinking.
Yeah. I've thought about just getting a billboard and just putting up like, has your advisor asked for your tax return? And it
Yeah,
just says Holistiplan,
that's such a power.
you
It's
know?
so powerful. Yeah, absolutely. Or even
Because the
where
ones who say no, they're like, wait, why have they not
why
asked for it? Yeah.
exactly, I didn't even know they should look at it. But even for clients who are very this is another thing we've been talking about a lot internally, folks who are, really charitably inclined, or, really want to develop this a legacy around charitable giving, or even want to um, create this is something we're thinking about a lot internally. Like, do we help clients and their families create like a value statement as a family? Like, what do we want to accomplish from a charitable standpoint? Ton of value you can add to clients who are, most clients don't know about donor advised funds and
Yep.
how to optimize the way in which they give and why that's important to them. And so it's another great area where you can use a tool like Holistiplan to help them.
Yeah. Well timed, Penny. We just
Yeah.
released the donor advised fund report today.
Awesome.
So yeah. Um, I could ask you a billion more questions because we're on the same wavelength on a lot of
Yeah.
this stuff. And I think we both agree that financial planning is it's not only a force for good, but it's also just an incredible differentiator for advisors. So again, we could go on and on about that forever, but I won't force you to do that. So one thing we always do on these calls is we do Roger in the hot seat. And so sometimes we always say ask the most uncomfortable question you can think of to
Oh,
ask me.
good.
And no
Okay.
one has done a very good job at that so far. So if you've got one, I'm willing to give it a try. If
Oh
you have an
gosh,
uncomfortable
really?
question. Yeah.
As an entrepreneur myself, this is something I'm curious about for you. Gosh, I almost don't want to ask you because it's kind of negative. But what's been the most disappointing thing for you about building this business?
Ooh, I might struggle to come up with an answer, so I'll babble while I think. You know, I started this business as part of a midlife crisis. So I, I was a financial advisor for 10 years, and there were elements of that job that were a good match for me, and there were elements that were not. Like I advisors are the people I serve every day. I have huge respect for what they do and what they're able to do for clients. Wasn't necessarily right for me in the long run. So I crafted a job in a business that fits me
Amazing.
really well, what I wanted. Um, I don't know the parts that, what's disappointing to me. I don't know about disappointing. I mean, the parts that are harder for me are, um, the thing about tech is it grows a lot. If you do well, it grows really fast. More so than what I was used to as an advisor, where our
Yep.
growth is more linear.
Yep.
And there's benefits and drawbacks to that. The benefit is it's just fun. I mean, every day I'm learning something new. The drawback is that uh, there's much more at risk. I mean,
Yep.
like you are always on the knife's edge of, what happens to what could happen to break your culture of your company, or as you grow, like what are you going to miss that could put the company at risk, or even put data security at risk, or something like that. Not necessarily a disappointing thing, but a thing that when we started this business, we never anticipated it
Yeah.
going this fast and us being
Yeah.
this big ever. And so I hadn't mentally prepared myself for some of those challenges that I would face. I've learned a lot from it. Elements of it I love still. The elements of it I'd be perfectly willing to give to someone else and make it their problem. But I mean,
Right.
that's the point you made at the top of the call, which is we have options. Like we have options to not have to take on everything ourselves. And if we
Correct.
really think really hard about crafting a business that plays to our own strengths,
Mm.
I think I'm old enough now to know what I'm good at and what I'm bad at. And it's a long list of things I'm bad at. And so but I don't have ego attached to giving those
Yeah,
things to someone else. And I
so
don't know if I
important.
would have been in that position 15 years ago,
Yeah,
you know? So I probably would have been a lot more disappointed 15 years ago having to admit that I couldn't do certain things. Whereas now I'm like, I'm happy not to do those things.
yeah,
Let it be someone else's problem. Let it be someone
yeah.
else's problem.
I
So I
mean,
don't know, maybe a
it's
dodge of your
great.
question.
No,
Maybe
not
partial
really.
credit.
I'm always curious how people where they'll go in their mind when there's a negative, word in the sentence. But that's a powerful jump to go from sort of letting go of the leadership ego. That's powerful.
Yeah. Well, there's still moments, right? I mean, software developers are these weird combinations of, they have a lot of power in their hands. Like a software developer, which is what I aspire to be, is you can create a thing out of nothing.
Unbelievable.
You
Yeah.
can destroy something very easily. And so like you can build a certain ego around that. And I've certainly learned like where I have to just be like, look, that's not my play. The advisors are going to tell me what they need. It's not up to me to tell them in every moment what they're going to get.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, that was a great question. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Let's see. I didn't really have anything else, so that was kind of where we wrap. But this was really a pleasure for me getting to meet you. And I've seen you
Awesome.
around the conference
Yeah.
circuit for years, but it was a pleasure to get to talk with you firsthand. And
Thank you.
I'm glad to hear that y'all are using Holistiplan and kicking the
Yeah.
tires on it. And I hope that advisors who work with you will get value out of it at all ends of the chain. Like I say, top of
Same.
the funnel all the way through to actually delivering for clients.
Yeah, same. And we're adding 3 teams October 1st. So it'll be exciting to sort of have them who've never seen anything like this before coming from captive firms see what we have. And so, like you, we're grinding and building, and it's fun and also exhausting. So, yeah.
Yep. All right.
Yeah. Awesome, Roger.
Well, you enjoy the second half
Thank
of
you.
your year.
You
And
too.
like I said, it was a pleasure meeting you. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you for having me. Bye. Take care.